Good morning, everybody. My name is Kathleen Burns. I'm an application engineer with TriStar, and today we're going to be doing a high-level overview. And I understand that I might have, a wide variety of experts from none to a pretty good expert on the call. So what I thought I would do is start with some questions that I usually throw at the end, questions and answers that I usually throw at the end. I thought I'd start the presentation with. But before I do, just to remind you, TriStar, if you guys are not aware, we are the PTC's largest in North America. We've got a lot of my colleagues across the nation and up in Canada and Mexico, and got a really, really smart team here that I work with. And TriStar is mainly a services company that works with typically manufacturing companies adopt, software and systems to try to help automate their business space. Okay. This was a slide that was included in the last webinar, but because it's not expired, I thought I would leave it in there. For those of you who are interested in the CAD side, PTC's CAD platform is Creo Parametric specifically. And there's, some time limited offers if any of you guys are interested. Thought I'd leave that slide on there if we wanted to get a screenshot or wait till the end of the presentation, because I think the slide is there again. But I want to talk about platform support, Express versus Premium Mathcad, specifically what's new in 6.0. We might have some users on the line who are using Prime already, or they may have waited to get into Prime, might still be sitting in Mathcad 14 or 15. So I'm also talking about the migration utility a little bit, but understand I might have several users here who are not familiar, who don't even know what Mathcad is. And, this presentation is mainly for you, but we might have some future topics and some future webinars that we can do some deeper dives in. So in this presentation, we'll do more of a Mathcad 101, Mathcad natural math notation, how it can recognize units. So it has units awareness. The documentation piece of this is pretty nifty. There is some new plotting capabilities that actually was introduced in Mathcad Prime 5.0. So I'll briefly show you some of the plotting capabilities in this presentation. I just like to mention templates. I'm all about reusing work or enforcing standards. So I'm all about templates. Anytime I get a chance to remind everyone to use templates, I do. I've got some integration shout outs. I'm calling them shout outs because these might be topics for some deeper dives. So I'm not going to do a big, deep integration demo right now, but it's got some really nice integration features with Excel and with Creo. And then, we'll talk about some potential future topics. Here's a slide on platform support. I want to say most of you guys have probably on Windows 10 at this point, so it is supported. For those of you guys who are on XP, you're out of luck. Hopefully you're not on XP anymore. Windows 7 support, looks like the support ended at the beginning of this year, around January 2020, right there. So I'm not saying it won't work, but if there's any installation issues or if Windows Update did something to mess up the installation, when you call tech support, they kind of wave their hands at it saying, sorry, it's not supported. You might have to upgrade your operating system. That was an issue when we were going from Mathcad 15 to Mathcad Prime. A lot of people on Mathcad 15 were upgrading their operating systems, and Mathcad 15 was no longer there. But I believe they have resolved that. They've added some support for Mathcad 15. So there is a free version of Mathcad. that everyone can use if you want. You can download it and have your high schooler kid maybe review his math homework if needed. You do get the full version free for 30 days, and then it turns into Express, okay? I kind of want to show you real quick. Let me bring in my Mathcad. This Mathcad is the full version. Let me launch Math. I only have one license of Mathcad, so let me launch a second. Let me open up a second session and drag it over. Okay, and you'll see that in the banner, it'll say that it's Express, that you're running the Express version. And it also opens up with this default watermark, reminding you that you are using Mathcad Express. How would you link up Mathcad Express to make it a full version? Well, you'd have to purchase the license through PTC or through TriStar to have an active subscription. And then you would come into up here in the upper left-hand corner, you have the radio button, and you can click on options. And then there's a license tab, and you can see that there's no license. So you can either browse to the license file that you obtained. There's probably a web version of acquiring a license. And so that would allow you to get the full version of Mathcad. So let's go ahead and close this one out because we're going to be demoing on the full version. But I wanted you guys to be aware that there is a free version there of Mathcad. And I threw in a URL link here that takes us to a web page that should bring up this compatibility chart. So let's bring that over. Okay, so one of the things that's new in Prime 6.0 is Spellcheck. Well, it's not available in the Express version. Okay, it is in the full version of Mathcad. Spellcheck is available. And so, you know, what's new in 6? Spellcheck. You can add hyperlinks directly. You can customize your margins and the header and footer sizes, right? So you can do a lot in this free version. There's a lot of things you can do. But if you wanted to do anything sophisticated, you're going to have to, you can bring in a basic plot, but if you wanted to label the plots and bring in a legend and, you know, really get fancy with it, you would have to have the full version of Mathcad. Okay, so I have this hyperlink available. If you're interested in this presentation later, we can get that to you. And while I'm mentioning that, in this presentation in the GoToMeeting, there is a handout. It's the data sheet that PTC puts out there. All of you guys should have access to that data sheet, but if not, let me know at the end of this call and we'll see if we can figure that out. What's new in Mathcad Prime 6? Pretty easy. You have the ability to customize the margins and the headers and footers. So if I go into Mathcad, right, for those of you who are already familiar, I'll go through the interface in a second. But if you go to the document tab, okay, you now have a new margins display here, right? If you want narrow margins, if you need to customize the margins specifically, you have the ability to do that. Okay, so margins, what else do we got? Spell check and hyperlinks can be directly entered into Mathcad. So let's kind of move down. If I wanted to go to www.tristar.com, see there's a hyperlink and it should work. Let's go check. Just going to control click it. Okay, so we're at TriStar's website, our homepage. Okay, so you can add hyperlinks directly. Also spell check. Bring in a text box here. All right, so that works. That's, you know, sometimes it's the little things that they bring in that make our life so much nicer with without Spellcheck, you know, it was just a little bit more painful. Spellcase ruined me. I can't spell it all. And so having that in there is quite a nice little enhancement here. What else we got? Usability enhancements, including expanded print options, find and replace updates. Okay, so that's pretty nice. 2D chart applications, such as exporting a plot as an image file. I'm going to be showing some of these chart options, some of the newer things that have been asked for in previous versions that they now have. There's a new symbolic calculation. I'm not too sure how much symbolic math a lot of you guys are doing. Let me kind of show you an example briefly. Symbolic math is when you, let's say if I were to come in here and let's do an integral, okay, of sine of x dx. Well, if I don't put any limits, there's technically not a real answer for this, right? If I do put in limits, I could hit equals and evaluate this numerically. But if I come in here and use this arrow button, this is evaluating it symbolically. And even if I did have limits, I could evaluate it symbolically, and you get the real answer, the true answer. There's no rounding at all that you might obtain with a decimal result. So that's what symbolic math is. And there's a lot of symbolics in here. That way you can do Laplace transforms and, right? If you're Fourier analysis, if you're into any of that stuff, the inverse Fourier or inverse Laplace. So there's some really neat keywords you can do. This is really all symbolic math. Well, there's a new symbolic engine that's going to be used by default, but don't worry. For those of you, for those of you who are using symbolic math, if the results look different, they might look different because they're using a different engine. But if these differences are problematic, you can go back to the old way the symbolic engine was using. But I'm going to ask you for a favor. Eventually, the new symbolic engine is going to take over. So if you could report your problematic results, why are they a problem? PTC is just going to help massage that engine for future releases to give you that desired result. Okay, so they're kind of relying on the community to provide feedback for the symbolic piece of things. And then just like with any other enhancement, every program is getting better and better as it comes out with new releases. So they're really working with large files, whether it's 100 pages or if it's a super complex calculation worksheet. They're working on the regeneration speed and just being able to interact with that data a little bit easier. Okay. I want to talk about the migration guide because I'm pretty sure that I got a few people on the line here who are sitting back, still sitting in Mathcad 15, waiting to make that jump to Prime. Totally get it. Change sucks. But I would say, if you can, let's make that jump. They're not putting any more R&D into Mathcad 15. And so the question I get often is, well, you know, can Mathcad Prime do this? Can Mathcad Prime do that? I could do it in Mathcad 15. And that's right. That's why Mathcad 15 is still supported. There are some things that have not made it into Prime, but they might never, ever make it into Prime. But there's some things in Prime that they've added in that was never in Mathcad 14 and 15. So you don't even know the new features that are there either. So, you know, a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I thought I would show you the migration guide because not only does it tell you how to use the utility to migrate a file, but the appendix at the very end, I think is the coolest part of this whole guide because it tells you what is supported and unsupported. So real quick, let me go into Mathcad. And if you go to resources, references, and you open up the migration guide, it's a PDF that comes with the install. Okay, and so, you know, it's a really long guide. Don't let it scare you. It says 61 pages, but I would say the first 2 pages is all you really need as far as how to run the converter. It does mention you need to have Mathcad 15 MO45 in order for this to work. If you do have it installed, the icon, this XMCD converter, I meant to say over here, I highlighted the wrong button. This guy right here will be active. If you do not have Mathcad 15 MO45 installed, that button is grayed out. So that's how you'll know right away if you're ready to go or not. And then the rest, a good chunk of this document just shows, hey, if this is what it looked like in Mathcad 15, this is what it will look like now. So it's just showing you a lot of the conversion results. A table may have looked like this before. Now it looks more like a matrix. Okay, so, but at the very end, we have this appendix that I feel like a lot of you guys sit in, and it talks about what's the feature and is it supported in Mathcad 6.0. Okay, so for example, custom currency symbols that are available in Mathcad 15 are not available in Mathcad Prime 6. I think they focus more, they focus less on currency symbols. Mixed fractions. If you wanted the whole number next to the fraction for 2 3/4, for example, I can't get that display inside of Prime. Maybe I'd have to use a decimal or just a single fraction with the larger numerator over the denominator. Okay. I can't do partial differential equations in solve blocks. I can do ordinary differential equations, but it doesn't look like I can do the partial. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of things that Mathcad 15 can do. I think it is going to be able to do 100% of the things that a lot of you guys are using Mathcad 15 for. But for some of you guys who are using Mathcad 15 for some very detailed niche things, there may be some things that haven't been carried over into Prime, but they might never be. Okay, so I wanted to let you know that this was available at the end of the migration guide that's available under the resources tab instead of Mathcad. But for those of you who are not familiar with Mathcad at all, now the presentation is for you. Why should we even use Mathcad, right? Well, math rules the world. It runs the world. It's the universal language. You know, if I was in CAD and I'm creating turbine blades for a big windmill, I probably wouldn't just go in and start designing the blade. Math would have to govern the equation and the curve of creating that turbine blade, right? So it allows us to capture our design intent, the engineering critical values, we can optimize parameters, and then what's going to be great is we can continuously improve this document and reuse it for future projects, streamlining that work, right? And Mathcad is great because you've got your standard math notation. You're seeing the math the way you learned it in school. You saw the integral when I was earlier, when I opened up Mathcad, I did an integral. If you can see the square root sign, right? I know if I was in Excel, the square root sign is to the power of 1/2. Well, now I'm assuming that the user who's reading this document knows that the power of 1/2 is equivalent to a square root sign. Okay. They might not be creating the file, but they might be consuming it. And making sure that we have a document that's easily consumed, I think, is just as important as the end result of what this file is giving us. Okay. There's a really good support for units. Units is everything, right? The thing I always say is, wasn't there a rover that smacked into the planet Mars in the 90s, because we didn't have conversion of units between the different countries that we're using and part of that program. Okay? Units are huge. It's a document-oriented approach. Being able to document, you have headers and footers and spell check, and being able to describe the math that's on the paper. It's like describing a program that someone might be writing. I always appreciate any comments that a program might have. Same thing for math. And some really good presentation features, whether you're manipulating the look and feel of your text or your plots. We can bring in areas which can hide or protect different sections of a document. That's always popular. Right, so Mathcad, I just found this slide from PTC and I stole it. But what I want to mention is it's just that look and feel. I don't need to know a proprietary scripting language. Those are powerful tools that are out there. Excel, another one, is a very powerful tool. It's just really hard to get in there and audit the math, right? When I have to go in and I click on D10, and D10 is equal to another equation from a whole bunch of other cells, which might be equations themselves, it's just really hard to dig in and audit that particular worksheet. Okay. Very powerful tools. I'm not trying to replace those other tools. I want to complement them. Okay, we'll be talking about that throughout this presentation. So let's talk about the interface first. For those of you who are not familiar with Mathcad Prime, even if you're still in Mathcad 15, the interface has changed quite significantly. You don't have the pop-out toolbars anymore that Mathcad, old school Mathcad used to have. Prime now went to the ribbon interface. So we've got the Math tab, input, output. Let me just open it up so you guys can see it live, not in the presentation format. The Math tab allows us to create the math, whether we have different operators or symbols, if we're bringing in different constants in here. We have our units up at the top, our unit system. We can change from SI to the US customary if needed. Okay, and we've got some copy and paste. Input output is where we can read data into and out of Windchill. I meant to say Mathcad, sorry. I've been in the Windchill space lately, which is PTC's PLM tool, product lifecycle management, states, life cycles, permissions, versions. But we're in Mathcad today. But this is where we can read in Excel or different data. Okay. The functions tab has all of our functions. They're either grouped into different categories, or you can turn on this all functions. If you click on all functions, it'll list it, all of the functions on the left-hand side over here. And you could come in here and search for a function if you needed to. And pick it. I usually just type it out here if you know what that function is. Matrices and tables allows us to do some linear algebra if you wanted to create a matrix and do any kind of matrix transpose or vectorization, any kind of matrix math. We can create tables and add and remove rows very easily to manipulate tables. The plots tab is everything to do with plots. Once you create a plot, and you can do in all versions, the free and the premium version, you could do all plots, but you need the premium version, the paid version, to do any of the 3D plots. Okay. We've got our math formatting and the text formatting, because often we might want our math and the text to look slightly different, but this is part of the documentation piece, right? If I wanted to, I came in here and I made my name a little larger and bolded it and underscored it, right? So you have the ability to throw highlight and change the look and feel of all of your math or text. The calculation tab is where we have the ability to control some settings like auto calculation. Let's see if I can do that. Auto calculation, what it does is as I make a change to some values, it automatically propagates it down the worksheet. If I have a complicated worksheet, I might turn that off. However, 6.0 has made that a lot more usable, working with large complex worksheets. But if you ever need to turn off all the calculations, make a bunch of changes and so it won't propagate it, and then you can force that calculation or that regenerate or propagation throughout the entire worksheet, you can do that all at once as well. Okay. The origin is for matrix math. What's that first element in the upper left-hand corner? Is it element 0, 0, which would be the 0 row, 0 column, or is it element 1, 1? What designation do we want? That's what this origin is. The document tab is really cool because you can come in here and turn on and off the grid of the engineering paper. You can create a header and footer if needed when creating this document. So I added this TriStar logo here. If I wanted to bring in the page number or the save date, we can definitely do that. If I go into draft mode, the draft mode is what pre-prime users, so Mathcad 14 or 15 users might be used to. And you can see the print preview, but it allows you to bring in some notes over here that you might not want to print. Okay, that would be draft view. Out of the box, you're in page view. So, you know, what you see is what you get. This is how it would print if I were going to print right now. I'm just using the little slider bar in the lower right-hand corner to increase the size of the font or decrease as necessary. And then the resources tab is where you can get some help. Okay, so different references, what's new. We've got our keyboard shortcuts if you're interested, engineering resources and community. So that would be essentially the interface. Down at the bottom left-hand corner, this is where you can do your find and your replace and different options that you have available here. Okay. Units. The unit awareness is very powerful inside of here. If I wanted to add, I just, 1 millimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 inches, 4 feet, 5 yards, and 6 meters. When I hit equal, it all recognizes that as units of length. Okay, if I were to come in here and let's just do a quick little, if I were to say 22 feet plus, and I'm just using my keyboard to enter in this math, plus 45 inches plus 6 furlong equals, it all recognizes it as units of length. And it's giving us our results in meters because our current system is in SI units. Let me come in here and copy and do a Control-C, Control-V below it a couple times. If I accidentally typed in a different unit, Mathcad would recognize that that's not units of length, and it won't erroneously calculate the result, which in turn won't propagate it anywhere this result might be used in the worksheet below. Okay, so if I come in here and change that back to inches, it's happy. If I didn't want this in meters, but I wanted it in feet, without changing the entire worksheet, I can just get rid of meters and type in feet, and it'll automatically convert those units. If I wanted to change the entire worksheet, I could change this SI unit system, let's say to the US customary, and it would change all of them. It would not change the one that I changed to feet though, although it looks centimeter gram seconds. Okay, it didn't change the feet one because I specifically said feet. Okay, if I wanted to go back, I can just hit enter and it'll recalculate it in whatever the default unit system currently is in. Okay. So those are units, very, very powerful. We've got units for everything. If you're interested in force, if you're in the electrical area and you need to know current or charge. Okay, there's a unit for smoot in here. units of length. There's a story behind that. I'll let you guys look that up later on. We can do temperature. The temperature can be a little tricky because you have to use a change in temperature to get the correct results. If I just say the regular temperature, it won't work. The engine translates it to the absolute values, ranking and Kelvin, and then translates it back, and you might not get the correct result. So in the training class, we talk about how you have to use the change in temperature in order to get the correct results. Okay, there's a ton of units in here that is supported inside of Mathcad. One of the other bullets I put in here was your units are in blue. Okay, so you'll see that when you're using the default theme. Constants are green. Can you see how that's green? Let me turn on. Nope, that won't work. Okay, green. So there is a default constant c, which is the speed of light. But if you redefine c, which you can redefine using this colon equals, well, I'm redefining this local the value. So when I evaluate c, it's not green. So I'm not using the default constant Mathcad value of the speed of light. Okay. Let's talk about the documentation side of things. I think it's the most powerful piece of Mathcad. It's live math. So not only if I would have math regions, let's switch back to Mathcad. You know, as I have math in here, so if I say A colon equals, so that's a definition statement, that equals 10. And if I say B equals 25, okay, we can see that C is going to be equal to the square root of A squared plus B squared. So I'm just using my keyboard to enter this all in. Oops. Laptop. Squared. Okay, and if I hit equals, you can see it gives me a result. Let's get rid of that guy. If I change, instead of 25, if I wanted to say 2.5, you can see how that automatically updates the results. Live math, pretty easy. One of the things I can do that's popular is you can use the explicit keyword to show the values that are being populated into A and B. So you can either come into the symbolics and select explicit, and then I want to be explicit with respect to A and B. And you can see it's plugging in the values for A and B, and then I'm evaluating it numerically to give me the result. So if A is equal to 100, you can see how that automatically shows my work. Okay, that was an example of a keyword. So you got live math, but I could also bring that into a text statement. Okay, so let's talk about the text block versus the text box real quick. Up here at the top, I created my agenda using a text block. So as I'm adding in additional information, everything on the page is shifting down. Okay, that's a text block. A text box is more like a post-it note. Okay, so this would be an example of a text box, and I can just move it anywhere I want. It's not affecting the rest of the worksheet at all. And if you hover over that particular icon, you can see you have some shortcuts, some hotkeys. So a text box is Control-T. A text block is Control-Shift-T. So you can see you've got some nice little keyboard shortcuts. And as you start using the tool more and more, those shortcuts become more regular for you. But if I come down here and say Control-T, I can say, I can enter live math into this text box to show that, and then we'll bring in the value of C. So this is where I would put in a little math region, and then I would say C equals, and then it's bringing in our value of C. So this would be a way like to summarize the results of a worksheet. You can bring in your math in there. We've got headers and footers that you have the ability to bring in. You have page view versus draft view, which I was showing you guys a little bit earlier. Page view is pretty much essentially your print preview. Okay, let's come in here and put in a page break so we can go to the next page. Okay, so you can see I have it on the footer, I've got the page numbers. We can turn the grid on and off. You can also change the size of the grid to make it fine. I would do that before you would create your worksheet. You can see how that collapses that I've done before. So if you go back and make it standard or fine, I would do that before you start creating your worksheet. Maybe even add that to your template. Maybe that's a template feature. Okay. We have areas that allow you to hide work. So if I had some equations that drive a lot of my worksheet, or I've got some custom units, or any definitions that I want to set in stone, what you can do is you can create an area. Okay. And let's take my units. So I'm going to highlight my units. And just to show you, I'm going to Control X and let's paste it into the area. Okay. What I can do is I can collapse this area and hide it if I need to. I can also come in here and we can protect it. So it could be password protected. So everyone has to use these formulas or these equations, but you do not have the ability to edit it. This would be one way to enforce company standards. Okay, is by using areas and throwing them in a template. These are always going to be our default units. These are always going to be, you know, the any kind of customization that you'd want standardized, you can add into an area and protect it. Okay. Areas, text block versus block. Okay, so they really try to work on the usability of Mathcad. They want you to be spending the time on creating the document and the math, not have to worry about how to create it. They're really trying to work on the usability of these files. All right, so in the last couple versions, when I would show a plot, it was always pretty simple. You know, you can always change the line weight or the symbols. You know, you had basic plots. So that's what we would call a quick plot, or what some users call the native plot. But now, starting with Mathcad Prime 5, they've added in this chart component, which allows you to come in here and add labels to the X and Y axis. You can bring in a gradient, you know, color to the plot if you needed to. I was having a little fun with this. You can fill the area of the plot, bring in different colors, bring in a legend, change the formatting of the numbers along the X and Y axis. Okay, so it was pretty interesting. I'm not an expert in this, but let's go in and show you. All right, so if I wanted to, let's define a function. F of X is equal to the sine of X is equal to the sine of X. I'm fine with that. All right, what we can do is we could bring in a plot. And this would be a regular quick plot right here. Control 2, I think, was the hotkey for that. And we'll plot the independent variable X along the X axis, and we've got the function along the Y axis, and there's our plot, right? As soon as I click the plot, with the plot not active, a lot of the actions up at the top are grayed out, but as soon as you select it, they come into play here. So I can change the thickness if I wanted to. We can bring in a second function. If I wanted to bring in g of x to be the cosine of x, I could definitely do that very easily. We can add a trace, remove a trace. let's see if I can just type it in here. Cosine of x. Okay, so that we've got the sine, we've got the cosine. I could have created g of x up here. I'm showing you many different ways to do the same thing. But as soon as you select the trace, the plot, then a lot of these active icons become active and you can make changes to it. But one of the questions is, can I add the label? And you always had to fake in the label by bringing in a note and kind of placing it right above it, or, you know, putting in some labels. Well, now PTC has included this chart component, and you can insert a chart component. Okay, and what are your inputs? And so that's what is the x expression and the y-axis expression. So you could always right-click up here in the inputs to insert your x-axis and y-axis expressions as needed. Okay, so for our x-axis, we'll say x. Okay, and for the y-axis, we'll call it sine of x. Just doing something very, very basic. Let's put in a page break up here. And if you double click this plot, it opens up this utility that allows you to come in here and manipulate the look and feel. Now, when I was taught this, I was taught to start all the way at the right, start at the right and work your way left. And it'll just make your life a lot easier as you're manipulating the look and feel of these plots. Okay, so if you have, I've got one trace. If I had multiple traces, a second, third, and fourth trace, you would see 2, 3, and 4 tabs respectively. We can change the color in here. We can change the style and the thickness if needed, just like we were able to before. I can bring in a symbol, but we can also bring in the area. Maybe you want to fill in the area above and below the x-axis if needed. This is where you can also have fun and bring in some of the gradients. You know, what's the gradient that you want in here? Okay, so you can have some fun with it. I really don't need to fill in the area. But then we can, we also have the setup tab, what kind of trace, you know, we're looking for. Then we have our y-axis, and what's the style of the y-axis? What grid lines? Do we want minor tick marks in here? What's the title? Okay, so now we have the ability to label. Right inside of this plot that we were not able to do before. Okay, I know it's something so simple, but it's those simple things that make our life easier. What about the x-axis? Do we want tick marks? Okay, do I want grid lines on or not? Right, the title, x-axis title. Setup, so you can change the way the numbers are formatted. Do I want it in decimal format, percents? Okay, what do these labels represent? And as soon as you just close this chart, you'll see the chart inside of Mathcad displayed. I just wanted to show you a very, very basic high-level overview, but if we want to go into a deeper dive later in the future on plotting, we can definitely do that. I'm all about templates. I'm using a template right now that all it included was the header and the footer. If you have company, you know, standard or letterhead or something similar, custom units, margins. If you want all of your math and text to look very similar across all of the documents that your company is pushing out. And we want everything to be in the US customary units, add that into a template and have everybody use the same template, and you can go a long way, and you can just start creating your math document. You don't have to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes on the setup piece of it before you start creating the file. Okay, I briefly wanted to talk about Excel integration, pros and cons to a couple different methods. I intend on doing a deeper dive on this, but if I were to open up Excel and copy, arrange, and paste it into Mathcad, you can definitely do that. Let's see. Let's come in here. Let me open up a file real quick. I've got this Excel worksheet that I'm opening up. Okay, it's just a very simple data set. I can come in here, Control C, come into Mathcad, and Control V, and I'm doing a straight copy and paste. Okay, I could give these labels, let's say X1, X2, and I could say X1 equals, and I'm pulling out that particular column. And then I can use it in math later on for whichever operation I need to use it. That's a straight copy and paste. The benefit is it's all in one document. There's no association between the data, which you might not want. It depends on your design intent. Okay, if that Excel file updates, do you want the data in here to update? Well, a copy and paste will not do that. Okay, you might need to use the next feature, which is the read Excel. So if I click on this read Excel function, I can read in data from an existing file. So I'm going to say browse. I'll bring in this input file that I opened up before, and it'll automatically pull in the entire range. But if you wanted to specify a subset of data, you can definitely do that. I'll go ahead and hit insert, and let's call this data. So when I come down here and I evaluate data, data equals, you can see it's pulling in the information from that worksheet. Now, the benefit is you've got that association to the Excel file. If the Excel file changes values, it's being read in. Okay, so those values will change inside of Mathcad. The downside is now we have two files. We've got a Excel file and a Mathcad file that you have to manage. The third method would be to use the Excel component, which was not working for me yesterday, but it is today, which is amazing. I did restart my computer last night, so I think that cleared some of my issues. And I am using Office 365, so I was curious if that was one of the reasons. But with an Excel component, what you can do is if you were to double click the table, it opens up Excel. Okay, and you could use the Excel functionality to create your data, do whatever you need, massage, manipulate. This is the simplest data set, but as soon as I hit close, you can see it's inside of Mathcad. That's an Excel component. I can do a deeper dive into all of this stuff on how to use the Excel component, what our inputs and outputs should be, etc. But this is an Excel file embedded within Mathcad. So the benefit is it's all in one file, and I'm still getting the Excel functionality. The downside is it's a heavier weight file, but computers and systems are getting so much better nowadays. I think that's minimal impact. We also have the ability to integrate with Creo, and I think that's a really cool integration. And what you can do is it uses this engineering notebook. I did find, I have a demo that I could show you, but I'm also hoping, I want to do a deeper dive, but I found pretty much a tutorial. So if you have a PTC account, you have access to this. If not, send me an email and I'll come back and I'll PDF it and send it to you. But what you're doing is you're essentially creating a cube inside of Creo, but you're using the dimensions within Mathcad to drive the size of the cube inside of Creo. All right, so the definition statements are from Creo, pulling into Mathcad, and then Mathcad pushes back the equal evaluation statements. And so it round trips it back. It's really, really cool. I really plan on doing a future deeper dive into the Excel and Creo integration. I could talk an hour on each topic by themselves. So I didn't want to go into too much depth on that. But it's there, really cool. For the engineering resources, if you go to the resources tab and you were to click on the engineering resources tab, it'll take you to an article that has a bunch of pre-generated worksheets for different industries, civil engineering, electrical engineering, and you have some pre-generated worksheets that you could utilize and tweak and manipulate for your own applications if you need to. Okay. Applying the momentum equation to determine water depth between bridge piers. You need to learn how to do that? Come check out this document. There are some that are compatible with the Express version, some that are compatible with the premium version. But if you download Express, you get premium for a month. So you can come in and check out all of these articles that you're interested in. So you have access to this page, right from resources, engineering resources. It'll take you right to that page. Okay, and I find that is very useful and helpful. Okay, here we go. If you're interested in works formulas for stress and strain, PTC does have those created in Mathcad as well. That is, you need to pay for that one. That one's not free. They're not giving up that one. If you're interested in training, they do have a lot of tutorials and free things that are out there, but you can get up and ramped up quickly in 2 days. That's what I do. I do a lot of the training side, so I thought I'd plug this a little bit. The first day, module 11 and up, is all the basics, creating the math, creating the variables, 2D plotting. The second day, which some customers have taken out, but this is where you can get some more of the advanced topics like optimization, differential equations, programming. There's a programming chapter in here. Okay, so this is just a 2-day. They do have other trainings, 3 days for strictly programming. So some advanced trainings as well. I mentioned I want to do a deeper dive for Excel and Creo integrations, but if you guys have some suggestions that you want to see in Mathcad, send them our way. And we can definitely try to accommodate that for future topics. We do have all of our webinars recorded. If you click on events at TriStar.com, you will see all of the past recordings for all different topics. CAD, wind chill, what's new in Creo 7.0 has just been put up there. If you click on if you go to the Resource Center and go to PTC Mathcad Prime, you'll see other Mathcad demonstrations that have been performed recently as well. So the TriStar website is going to be a nice resource for you guys who are interested in. I would like for questions. Does anybody have any questions at the moment? Open up our question thing. Okay, I see there was one question, but it may have had to do with the Okay, well, if you don't have any additional questions, here's the time limited offer slide that I wanted to show again. It's mainly for Creo, but some of you guys on the line are interested in that. If you need to reach out, TriStar.com, or our number is 800-800-1714. Please reach out, give us your feedback, take a look at some of those previously recorded webinars. And I'd like to thank you all. Have a good one.